I'm very excited about today's video because we've got a new toy to play with from Samsung, and if you've read the title of this video, I'm sure you already know what it is. Listen to that, that's so satisfying. So today we are gonna be playing with the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip. Now Samsung sent me this phone a couple of weeks ago just to play around with, test, and kind of just do whatever I want with it. I gotta say, it's actually grown on me quite a lot. Apart from the Galaxy colorway, which is an absolute fingerprint magnet, I actually really like this phone. It's got some pretty awesome features, which I thought we would test out today. So before we get stuck into it, let's go over the specs of the Galaxy Z Flip real quick. So the Z Flip has a 6.7-inch infinity display, and Samsung are saying that this is the first phone made out of ultra thin folding glass. It's got multi-active window display, meaning basically if you fold the phone, or if you want to use the phone and divide it into two halves, you can have one thing at the top, another thing at the bottom half of the display. Probably one of the coolest features about this phone, apart from the fact that it folds, is the front display. So if I press the on button there, you can see the display comes up with the date and the time and your battery and all the rest of it. If I double tap that, that turns into a front camera. So if you want to take selfies or take photos with the phone actually shut, you can do all of that and access all of that information without having to actually open the phone. But I guess the whole point of a flip phone is so you can do that, whip it out and flex on everyone else that's got a normal non-folding phone. All right, so obviously the massive difference between the Z Flip and any other phone on the market is the fact that it can fold. And the thing that I like the most about it is it doesn't just fold, but it's freestanding, meaning that if I open it up, it's gonna stay in position like that. When I saw this, I immediately thought, well, that kind of removes the need for a tripod when it comes to photography. So I figured I'd head out tonight, hit the streets of Sydney, and try and capture some long exposure photography using this freestanding flip tripod phone. I don't know what you want to call it, whatever you want to call it. I thought we would go out and capture some long exposure photography, some time-lapse photography, just testing that theory of using this purely by itself without the use of a tripod. All right, so before we go out and start shooting with this bad boy, I would love if you would take a second to hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already, and drop a like down below. It's gonna help me out a lot, and it's gonna help me to continue creating awesome content for you. So if you could do that, you are an absolute legend, mate. You're a legend. Enough talking, let's go hit the streets and see what we can catch up with the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip. Basically, we've come to this location here, which is like an overpass to the freeway in Sydney. And it kind of overlooks the city and the freeway down below, which is a really cool backdrop. And I guess the game plan is to set up the Z Flip on the edge of this little ledge here, and we're at a good height, which means that we can angle the phone up and down. And once we've framed the photo correctly with the flip, we'll shoot a long exposure, so we'll adjust the ISO, set that to the lowest possible, and then we'll open up the shutter speed for as long as possible on the Z Flip to hopefully get some cool light trails below, and we'll see how it goes just by itself without a tripod. You can adjust the shutter speed and the ISO, but you can't adjust the aperture or the f-stop, which means I can't get the actual camera dark enough to take the long exposure. So I brought along the little Polar Pro ND filters. We're trying to get a shot at 50 ISO, which is the lowest ISO they can go, and 10-second shutter using this little guy, which is ND 18, I think, which is gonna bring it down considerably and make sure that we capture everything within that 10 seconds. So hopefully that works a little bit better than just using the phone by itself. All right, so we ran into a few issues when we were trying to shoot the long exposures last night. Mainly being that we couldn't change the f-stop, which would considerably darken our image, which would allow us to leave our shutter open for longer. but we had to get a little bit creative and find some ways around that to kind of capture what we wanted. So this was the first attempt that I shot here. This was shot at an ISO of 50 with a shutter speed of 2 seconds, meaning that the actual camera was open for 2 seconds and we captured everything within that 2-second time period. So if I show you the before, you can see that it's a little bit overexposed, but we do have some nice detail in the sky. It's just the highlights are a little bit blown out, but luckily because I can shoot RAW on this, I was able to bring it back by applying one of my presets and just bringing down those highlights and giving the image an overall more rounded sort of clean look. With a shutter of 2 seconds though, we weren't really able to capture those nice long light trails that we were looking to get. And yeah, I did think that this shot was a little bit overexposed just on first impressions. So for my next attempt, I actually decided to get a more well exposed image and leave the shutter open for even less time. And this one here is shot at ISO 50 with a shutter of 0.5 of a second. So the camera was open for half a second and captured all the movement within that half a second. So again, we have a little bit of a light trail going on here, but nothing like what we really wanted to capture. And obviously the sky and everything is a lot darker. I used the exact same edit on this shot here, and although it's better exposed, it's not really what we were going after. So the main issue was that I couldn't leave my shutter open for long enough without just completely overexposing and blowing my image out. So I had a little ND18 that I held over the lens, and that brought down the exposure considerably, which allowed me to leave my shutter open for 10 seconds and capture this shot here. So as you can see, this is much more the type of shot that we were trying to get. You can see we've got nice long light trails in every lane of the freeway. Because the shutter was open for 10 seconds, there was a lot more time for cars to actually pass through and go up and down the freeway during that time period. And because we had the ND filter over it, we could actually leave our shutter open for that long without overexposing our image. And I think a little bit of the ND filter actually came into the edge of frame here, but I actually don't mind this as an effect. It almost looks like there's something in the foreground, or it could be like a lens flare or something. So for this shot here, I actually applied one of my presets again, and then made a few adjustments to the shadows, brought down the temperature a little bit to make it cooler, more of a night tone, and I went over with an adjustment brush and painted over those light streaks on the freeway just to bring them out, make them pop and make them a little bit more vibrant, make them the focus of this image here. So all in all, I captured some good shots, but there wasn't one that I was completely happy with. So I actually decided to layer all of these images in Photoshop and pick and choose the best elements from each to create this image here, which I'm really happy with. So as you can see, I kept all those light trails and that little flare off on the side. I basically just put them on 2 separate layers and then masked out the sky so that we have an evenly exposed sky and foreground, just to create an overall more even, clean looking image. So while the Z flip was set up and we were capturing stills, I also decided to capture a time lapse, and I left it rolling for about 5 to 10 minutes. I ended up with a pretty cool time lapse of the freeway, which managed to capture all those light trails and all the cars that passed through during those few minutes. So I threw that into Premiere Pro, threw on one of my LUTs and made a few other color adjustments to bring down the exposure, because I did think that that was a little bit overexposed as well. And then I decided to bring it to life through some sound design. So for the sound design aspect of this, I headed over to Epidemic Sound, which is where I source all of my music and sound effects from. And I searched up traffic sound effects, city ambience. I just went in to pick and choose a few different sound effects that I think would really bring this to life. I downloaded them, layered them and stacked them underneath my clip, and it created this. Now this video isn't sponsored by Epidemic Sound, but I have created a link for you guys to get 1 month free, so you can sign up, test out the platform. It's where I source all of my music and sound effects from. It's all royalty free. You can use it across any platform you want. There's a link down in my description if you want to check that out and test out some of the awesome music and sound effects that they've got over there on their platform. So all in all, last night's shoot was a success. We managed to capture an awesome time lapse and create a cool little clip out of that, and we got some really cool still images as well, and a really cool long exposure shot that kind of proved my theory right, that you can use this as a self-standing tripod camera. And it's awesome to see the kind of tech that Samsung are coming out with, and just the things that you can do with a device that's so small and can fit in your pocket. So if you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like down below. Let me know what you thought down in the comments. Subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I will catch you in the next video.